There we go. All right. I was just gonna say, like, I don't see the little red light blinking at me. All right. This open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order the March 17th, 2021 meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee at 7 p.m. I'm Narissa Wallen, Chair of the Triton Regional School Committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Erin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paul Goldner?
Here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Maureen?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Caitlin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paulise?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Linda?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paul Mayette?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Tina?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Ooh. Excellent. And I don't think I saw Kaylee come in. Let me just do a quick scan down the list for her. No, I don't see her on the list. Okay. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Triton Superintendent Brian Forget.
Here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Assistant Superintendent Kim Croto.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. And School Business Administrator Kyle Warren.
I'm here and I can hear you.
All right, thank you. For this meeting, the Triton School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom using the information posted on the district's website identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you are not speaking. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district's website with the agenda posting unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All right, so welcome to the March 17th meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee, and happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. I'll keep chairperson's remarks short tonight. I just want to note that the committee met in executive session last night and approved the second memorandum of understanding of the pandemic with the Triton Regional Teachers Association Unit A. That contained 4 main points. One of them is a calendar change, which we'll talk about more tonight. That will move the last 9 Mondays in the year to an early release, 90-minute early release, and remove the half days for professional development and high school finals. It included a room by room list that indicated the maximum occupancy for each room. The addition of up to 2 sick days to be used for a vaccination appointment or the day after a vaccination appointment, and conditions around streaming for grades 7 through 12, so that students who wish to remain home in a full-time remote model after the shift to full in-person will be able to do so and stay with their teachers in the same classes that they're in. So that was approved last night. Before we launch into oral communications and then into the agenda proper, I just wanted to thank the administration for the many, many hours that were put in. I think we've noted before that the schedule on this is very crunched. It's a lot to get done in a short period of time, and drawing up this plan was a big part of it. It's 22 pages, I think. I didn't print, yeah, 22 pages total, which was done in about a week and a half. Which is just a phenomenal amount of work. I should say the vast majority of it I know was done like over 4 days, pulling together at the actual written part of it. So that's a tremendous undertaking. I know people lost weekends to that, lost nights to that. And in a time when we are all already stressed and exhausted, that's a lot to ask. So thank you to everyone who put in time working on that. Before we go talk about that plan for the return to in-person learning, I'll open it to oral communications from the public. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public, the meeting host muted you as you entered the meeting. If you would like to address the committee, please indicate now that you would like to do so, either by raising your hand on your video call or using the raise hand option on the participant screen. The meeting host will unmute you so that you can address the committee. Please refer to the public comment policy language on the agenda when making your comments, and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. When you have finished speaking, the meeting host will mute you again. And I'll read aloud the public comment on the agenda. Members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes unless extended at the discretion of the chairperson. As in previous nights, I will allow for up to half an hour if we have need of that. Also, as in previous nights, I'll note that each speaker has those 3 minutes. When you reach your 2-minute mark, I'll give you a sign for that. When you reach 30 seconds and at the 3-minute mark, you'll be cut off, and that individual public comment will be ended at that time. So if you'd like to speak during public comment, again, use your raise hand option on your video call or the raise hand option on the participant screen. And it looks like the first and only one for right now is Tetro's iPhone. So I think I accidentally got Kim instead of the iPhone. There we go. So I'll ask you to unmute. I'm sorry.
Hi, it's just, oh yeah,
Sorry. Unlocking
You're
my
all
phone so I can get my stopwatch. Go for it.
are you good? All right. So
Yes.
I apologize for the mask. I'm actually at a hockey game. But I really just wanted to take a minute to say thank you to Brian and his team. I think that 22-page document was an amazing document. It was so good that I actually shared it with a couple of schools who I know are potentially looking to use it as well and pull some things from it. So I just needed to make sure that I said thank you. As a mother of a senior, I know I've been very vocal about wanting the kids back. And at this point, I really like the plan to bring the kids back and then be able to bring the 12th graders back on April 12th. So I really hope that all 9 school committee members, it would be a beautiful thing if all 9 of you voted unanimously tonight and throw your full and complete support behind Brian and his team. They have been masterful in everything they have done. And I really appreciate it. And I know so many do. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, and next on the list is Mary. Yep, you should be unmuted, Mary.
Hi, thank you, Narissa. Thank you, everyone. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And of course, I want to echo what Martha just said in support of Brian, the team, of course, the nurses at all 5 of the schools, Kim and Kyle, and of course, the school committee. When you guys were voted in a year ago or 2 years ago or even 3 years ago, you certainly did not expect 2020 to pan out the way that it certainly did, in the countless hours that everyone has dedicated of their lives away from their families. I just want to certainly recognize that across the board. About a year ago, believe it or not, I think we may have remembered the 2 weeks of flatten the curve. I'm sure we wish that it was really just 2 weeks ago. And of course, we're in it together. And we truly are here at Triton in it together in our rich tapestry of the Triton community. This is probably one of the most important votes that our school committee will have faced, probably ever. I certainly hope that the school committee, in echoing Martha's sentiments, unanimously supports Brian in this great reopening plan. 22 pages, certainly extremely comprehensive, and the partnership throughout the entire community is very evident in the amount of time and the effort that was put into creating this document. The BINEX now rapid response test, I'm a big proponent for that. I think that's great to see that called out. I certainly love to see that if our students are in a quarantine situation in middle and high school, they can still learn remote. Also, the last 3 pages for the distancing is just excellent. So to echo what Martha said, we are in it together. Let's approve Brian's plan as laid out. Thank you so much. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone.
Thank you. Moving on to the Barrows crew. I'll ask you to unmute.
Hi, Triton School Committee. Just apologies. I'm at my son's baseball game, so it's a little dark here. But I just wanted to reiterate what Martha and Mary had said as well, and also my comments that I had sent to the school committee today, reinforcing, requesting to have the school committee approve Brian's plan as such. But I also want to just chime in one little comment about that. If you do not believe that that plan is acceptable and that you do reject it, then I believe you need to treat it as a failure. And that is, again, my reiteration of that the goal should be to get our children back in school, full-time, in person. And if the plan that is not produced, does not achieve that, then it should be considered a failure, and you should be demanding what is needed to make that happen. So please, if the plan is acceptable, you need to approve it, please. And I'm asking you to do that. But if you don't feel so, then you should be demanding, finding the team to get what is needed to get them back in school ASAP. Thanks. And again, thanks again for all your efforts and your contributions to the community. It's all appreciated no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny is next on the list.
Hi, this is Jenny Thurlow. I have a kindergartner and a 7th grader in middle school. And I was just, again, saying for my son, I really hope that the middle schoolers can go back along with the elementary school as soon as possible. His grades are absolutely slipping. So just thank you for your consideration. And my daughter wanted to say one quick thing. Go ahead. Quickly, Savannah. All right, never mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, anyone else?
Hi,
Hands
Narissa.
rolling. Yep.
Hi, I'm not on the Zoom, but I called
Okay.
in.
Okay.
Whenever I can have a turn. I know you
Yep,
can't
go
see.
ahead.
Okay. My name is Maina Duso, and I'm in Raleigh. I'm a mother of a sophomore, and I normally I don't speak, but I am compelled to do this, and I'm frustrated. This has gone long enough, and I am asking the school committee to approve Brian's outlined plan to return April 12th for the high school kids. And thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I do not see any more hands. All right. All right, Paul Lees. Oh, I'm sorry. I spotted, I think what you're looking at. It's weird because we're all shifting around. Belkis.
There you go.
She's muted.
Hi, can you
Yep.
hear me?
There we go.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm mother of 3 kids at the community, and
Sorry, can I just
I'm
stop you for a second and ask for your name?
Belkis.
Okay.
Yes. So, and I have one of my kids, he's in a 504 plan. He's in middle school, and I'm so scared to send them to school, and my other 2 kids. And I also have another girl that is in a 504 plan. So I'm happy that they will be, there's both opportunities for some kids that can go to the school, and other one can keep remote, because I'm so scared, honestly, to send one of my kids to the school right now. So I'm so glad that they can choose to send that one part can go in person and the other one can finish remote, at least until we have the vaccine. And with all this situation, it's pretty scary with a special health situation to send kids to the school at this point. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Sorry, I'm gonna do the scroll again. It takes a while to get through here. All right, I do not see any more, so we will move on. Thank you all. Plan to return for in-person learning, and I am going to turn this one straight over to the superintendent. He has promised me, since we've had the 22 pages in advance, that he will be brief tonight and cover the high points.
I often fail at brevity, but yes, I will. I think, part of the thinking behind getting the plan out on Monday was that everyone, parents, family, community, committee members, anyone had the plan. I'm certainly not going to go through this plan in detail tonight. I also want to just reiterate, there are several people are calling it Brian's plan. And while I appreciate that, this is absolutely a group effort. There are so many people that contributed to making these 22 pages come together and become a reality. So I want to thank, all of our educators, our support staff, our custodians for the work they do to keep the buildings clean and sanitized, and the nurses, I've seen a couple of them here, who are doing yeoman's work to make this all a reality, and our teachers and the building principals and Kim and Kyle and Dave. It's been a tremendous effort from a lot of people. So I would be remiss not to say that. So I'm going to try and take you very briefly through this document just to kind of give you the high points to make sure we say them out loud. Starting on page 3, it reiterates the key focus here is that this is an addendum to the original plan that was produced last August. So all of the things, all of the thinking, all of the planning, all of the rationale that went into the planning back in August and over last summer to focus on physical safety of students and staff, the equitable access for everyone, and the focus on social, emotional, and mental health, that is all still the same. Nothing changes. So it's important. There's been, several comments made tonight. Everyone is going to approach this differently. We are going to have students coming racing back in the doors as if nothing happened. We are going to have students who are not able to walk back through the doors for various reasons and will stay remote. And there'll be many who will walk back through the doors, and we may see that they're incredibly anxious and stressed, and this is hard. And there are others who will be the same. They will be anxious and stressed, and we just won't see it. So, we're doing this all under the guise of knowing that this is not an easy shift. And we would be remiss to simplify that too much. To say that this is just, let's open the doors and rush back in. So those 3 goals, as we laid them out last summer, have not changed, and they will stay with us as we shift back. The priority here, I want to make sure we say this, it's hard as a superintendent to say academics aren't important. However, for the 10 weeks after we shift back, academics are absolutely important. But our priority is returning students to the routines, the normal expectations, so that we can begin to reset and reestablish those routines to make sure that students are successful. Students will absolutely learn the final 10 weeks of school. Of course they will. But first and foremost, when we look at the focus on social, emotional, and mental health, this is about reestablishing those expectations and those norms so that we can take one baby step along that path to getting us back to where we were pre-March 13th of 2020, when, as Mary noted, just 2 weeks, right? Just 2 weeks, we're going to flatten the curve and the world changed. So just want to set that context. As far as the DESE guidance that begins on page 4, I want to make sure it's clear that we have 2 options. When the regulations were changed, the commissioner had the authority to remove, to determine when remote learning no longer counts as time on learning. He set that as April 5th for the elementaries, April 28th for the middle schools, and a yet to be determined date for the high school. So by making that choice, that is taken off the table as far as when those, that remote learning is taken off the table. Technically, even the remote academy, per the regulations, don't qualify, however.
Can I interrupt you for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Just because you're the host, I need you to shut down chat, please.
I'm sorry, one more time?
You're the host and I need you to shut down chat, please.
Gotcha. I forgot to shut that off.
Thank you.
Is that better? No, yep, it's all set now. where was I? So 2 options. So technically remote learning no longer counts as of April 5th for elementary, 28th for middle school, yet to be determined for high school. However, the commissioner has said the remote academy in whatever form it takes in a district is allowed for the balance of this year. So the hybrid model as we know it at Triton and all the variations across the state are no longer allowed. All we can do is offer a full-time in-person or a full-time remote option. Those are the 2 choices. No longer are the 2 days a week or 4.5 days a week. So just to make sure, there's several people who have, I've had lots of conversations over the last 2 weeks with parents and teachers and educators. And so there's been lots of questions about, so what if we want the hybrid option? And so just to make sure that's clear, I want to make sure that's clear that that is no longer an option. That is the major change here. So again, K-5 required by April 5th, middle school by April 28th, and the high school yet to be determined. If you look at page 5, right there at the bottom of that boxed text, it's a subtle sentence, but it is the one that has caused the most angst for educators and certainly districts across the state, where it says the commissioner may delay or accelerate the timeline for subsequent phases of the plan in consultation with medical experts and state officials. So for me, in working with our team and the leadership team, it certainly, that statement gives me great pause in thinking about the fact that it could be accelerated. So right now there's no date for high school. They could put a date that accelerates it even closer than April 28th, and they could accelerate the middle school April 28th. So for me, and working with the team and all of our discussions, I believe the most appropriate way forward is to set a timeline that we can controlling locally and making the decisions that work for the logistics that we have to work through to make that choice. So obviously, vaccines is a major discussion. We have been talking about that for months. I had made lots of connections and had ongoing discussions with a local pharmacy. They have not had access to the vaccine. That all changed 2-3 weeks ago, and the state shifted vaccines all to their locations. We've since had the Lower Merrimack Valley Collaborative established with the 3 Triton towns, the 3 Pentucket towns, Newburyport, Amesbury, and Georgetown. That initially on the rollout, they weren't prioritizing teachers. They have since set 2 dates for educators' priorities. That is this coming Saturday and then Saturday the 27th. Prior to that, we have had, I believe Narissa mentioned it a week ago, if not 2 weeks ago, about the other districts utilizing kind of the buddy system. And so we've had outside folks, we've had PTA representatives, we've had staff members, just apparently the magic hour sometime between 4:45 and 6 a.m. getting up, and CVS did open up earlier this month, open up educators to be able to be vaccinated. So through the efforts of lots of clicking and refreshing for an hour at a time, bright and early in the morning, all hours of the day, we now, I actually sent an email out yesterday just to say to all staff, if there's anyone who is not yet in queue to be vaccinated, either a first dose, whether it's the local clinic in Amesbury this coming Saturday or next Saturday, or through another system, CVS, Walgreens, or otherwise, or some folks are already, we'll say, half vaccinated or fully vaccinated. I asked folks to reach out to me. I haven't heard from one individual. So the assumption at this point is I even think by this coming Saturday, almost all of our educators will have a first dose or a first and second dose and be on their way towards full vaccination. And I had it confirmed today that when educators go for our vaccine on this Saturday or next Saturday, they'll actually leave with a QR code that will schedule their second dose, and that will be in Amesbury as well. So certainly the vaccine was a significant, I would say, challenge, and that's I know we've had lots of debate about whether educators need it. My personal belief is I think it's important, and it's important to teachers. And so I think it was important for us to make sure we supported our educators in that process. So ideally, we would have had everyone vaccinated. That wasn't possible, but I'm certainly feeling better today than I was a week ago today in regards to the process and the way it's rolled out, and most recently through our towns and their efforts. I should stop there. I'll pause and breathe. Or should I just keep going? And then we'll just do questions. It goes forever if I pause. Just keep
I
going.
was gonna say, I think it's best if we take it, if you're hitting highlights, truly hitting highlights, then take it all the way to the end, and then we'll come back with questions.
Back to the highlights.
Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. Assessing the feasibility, right? Did a survey. We currently have about 88% of our students learning in the hybrid model, about 12% of our students learning in the fully remote model. That stayed almost true with almost 80% of our parents or families responding on behalf of our students. The split stays roughly the same. Again, that's not a commitment, but that was done to determine and make sure we weren't going to have 30% that we're going to want full remote, to make sure that our plans made the right assumptions. As far as transportation, there was actually a question that came in today about perhaps the wording that I used in transportation wasn't clear. Our buses with the updated regulations as they're outlined in this plan can fit all of our students. We can route all of our students as we normally would route them. Based on the survey, about 50% of our students are anticipating to use the bus, which means that we will likely be not a whole lot more full in many cases than they are now. So we do have the capacity within the guidelines to transport all of our students. It will likely play out that the spacing is better than what we would have as the minimum standard. So again, I won't go through that. Again, the standard is using the 3 feet as a minimum, 6 whenever possible. The vast majority I'm not going to go through the annex, and then we are generating a room by room list that would outline the maximum number of desks, if you will, in a typical classroom that could be in that classroom at 3 feet, and then be able to determine that right off the bat to know how many we could fit in that classroom before we would have to open another classroom, another section, or find another space solution. On average, many of our classrooms are going to be in the 4 to 5 foot distancing range. Again, that's measuring shoulder to shoulder, if you will, seat edge to seat edge. That's not middle of desk to middle of desk. There's lots of different ways that folks have tried to work the system. We're not working the system. There actually will be a minimum of 3 feet between kids, between students, between adults. So just to make sure that that's clear. So getting to page 9, the full in person, what stays the same? Everything but the distancing. Everything we've done to improve air quality and enforce mask wearing and hand washing and sanitizing, the daily cleaning and sanitizing of the buildings, the minimizing the sharing of supplies between students, all of the things that we've done to mitigate and increase safety, those all stay the same. All we're doing is relaxing. Rather than using the 6 foot standard, we're using a 3 foot standard at a minimum. In many cases, it's more like 4 or 5. So that's important on the bottom there, page 9, to note that it's always been important, but now it's absolutely important that we're still paying attention to all those mitigation strategies. And when someone is symptomatic, that everyone's staying out of school, whether it's an educator or a student. If someone is symptomatic, they shouldn't be in the building. And if there's a question about symptoms as we approach what do you call it, allergy season, then certainly the nurses would love to have a conversation with you and talk through, rather than erring on the side of not cautious. Let's err on the side of cautious. And as always, please reach out to the building nurses if there's questions. So what will be changing? We are going to implement the Binax Now testing. Information was sent out to all families in regards to consenting to that. It's an electronic consent process. It's a rapid point of care test. It will only be applied when a student is symptomatic or a staff member is symptomatic. If a student tests negative, they do still need to go out, because they were symptomatic, does need to go out and prove that negative test with a PCR. We have through Action Ambulance can do the same for staff on a much more limited basis. If it's a positive test, it's treated as a positive, plain and simple, and all the protocols go in place. So that consent process is in play. For those that can't consent electronically, there is a paper process that's going to require that the family member comes in to pick up the student, which they would already be doing anyway because they're taking the student home because they're not feeling well. But they would have to consent in person. We could then administer the test. It's only 15 minutes and then they can be on their way. So in regards to the classroom, at the elementary level, it's going to look very different than it has because we have the remote academy fully streaming as separate classrooms, and then we'll call them fully intact in-person classrooms, pre-K through 6. So there is no streaming going on. There are no students at home streaming in. All of the students in a classroom are in the classroom, and it will be a more traditional classroom setting. It still doesn't look normal, right? Classes, or I'm saying desks are still spaced apart. A normal kindergarten, first grade, you've got tables and grouped together. None of that's there anymore, right? It's still desks, it's still separated, but all of the students are in the classroom setting. As far as the middle school and high school, we will still have students streaming in. I'll talk about that in a second with the remote academy. So we do have an option now where students can remain with their current high school teachers and stream in full time if they commit to that. So that is going to obviously change things when there are still students at home streaming in and there are students in the classroom streaming in. So again, classrooms still look very different. It's all chairs and spaced apart. There's no other furniture, but it is still a far more streaming setup, for lack of a better description. That's not a great description at all, but it's a still set up for both streaming and in-person learning at the middle school and the high school. For attendance, this is key for someone to choose the remote academy. Again, parents will be able to make a choice. We'll get to that in a second as far as the timing. Parents will get to make a choice: full return in person, full-time remote. Choice is optional. Every parent gets to make that choice. Every family does. But that choice needs to be consistent. Can't say I'm going to stream one week and then be in person the next week and stream the next week. So it's important to note that if someone's requesting a change, it's going to take up to 4 weeks to facilitate that change. When elementary students are out in quarantining, we won't have the ability to stream. So it will be like a typical student is out when they're sick and would have work to make up as they normally would at the middle school and high school level. They would be able to stream in. Cafeterias, we've talked a lot about this. 5 very large tents coming to the middle school, high school campus will basically have an outdoor cafeteria, an indoor cafeteria. Middle school will fit between the regular cafeteria and the outdoor cafeteria, if you will. The high school will still utilize the auditorium and the gymnasium as well, just based on the total numbers and the rotations. So tents, highlights, grab and go meals, they're continuing. That is for any human between the ages of 0 and 18. Doesn't have to be a Triton student. They're living within the towns. We will still have the grab and go meals pickup curbside in all of the locations, or we might have to streamline the locations, but we will still have grab and go meal pickup for anyone who would like to have those remote meal options. Hallways, a lot of questions about hallways. Certainly at the elementary level, very different than at the high school and middle school level. At the elementary, classes tend to be moving together with teachers. And so the spacing is, you've watched a kindergarten classroom walk down the hallway, and it's, I don't know how they measure the perfect distance between kids. It's just a system. So at the elementary, far more structured. At the middle and high school, obviously there's a whole lot more student autonomy. And so that's a lot less structured. In speaking lots of discussions with the nurses, the biggest concern is students congregating, right? If students are masked, and from my understanding and everything I've seen and heard, is students have been tremendous, as have educators. Everyone's been tremendous with wearing masks. With everyone masked, as people are walking by one another, that's not the concern. The concern is stopping, talking, spending that, being within 6 feet for more than 15 cumulative minutes. So we can't keep everyone 6 feet away at all times in the hallways, just by the very nature, but the focus will be making sure that everyone's moving. People aren't hanging out lockers, all those things are still off the table to make sure that we're limiting the exposure. But hallways will look full compared to what they normally have been. I shouldn't say normally. They'll look more normally full compared to what they have been with half the student capacity. Masks and snack breaks, we'll continue that. At the elementary, we have tents being installed as well, so that even on bad weather days, there will be a space. It'll be two 20 by 30 foot tents to utilize to have students just be able to go outside, take their mask off, and just be out of the weather, take a quick break, have a snack. Student schedules to confirm. Preschool, there is no change. We shifted back to the regular schedule back in February, so there's no change for preschool. Kindergarten is going to full-time, and there is no tuition. So we are not collecting a tuition for the last 2 months of the year. We had assumed that as a loss as far as the current year. So this is great. We can bring everyone back in and maximize the time we have with kindergarten students, but there's no tuition. If families would like to still choose that half-day option, they still can choose to have their student released at that midday point, and we can certainly arrange that as we have in the past. Elementary schedules will stay fairly consistent. There'll be some fluctuations for that 90-minute Mondays and to accommodate lunches. At the high school, there'll be changes, but it's basically the same 90-minute blocks. And then the day rotation will change because currently it's the same period both days, because cohort A is in and cohort B is in, and then it rotates. It'll rotate every other day like a typical schedule. So a student will have all of their classes for 90 minutes over a 2-day period. So very typical what they've done in the full remote schedule. Monday early release. So we have, as part of the discussions with the Teachers Association, we had on our full remote Mondays, we had a collaboration time Monday afternoons. That is going to continue in this plan. And in doing that, to capture the time, the lost time, there are 2 half days in May that were all schools pre-K through 12. I don't know if the date's right in front of me, but it was the beginning of May and end of May. There were 2 Wednesday half days. Those are coming off the calendar, as well as at the high school. The high schools removed final exams, similar to the fact that they removed midterm exams. Those 3 half days are now going to be full days of school. So we captured quite a few learning hours there. So we're going to continue those Monday afternoon early releases. They'll be typical, traditional early releases. So at 12:43, the students go home and it's not an asynchronous afternoon, it's an afternoon, and the elementaries will dismiss at 1:30. So that is in the plan and on the schedule, and we'll certainly communicate that with families as we get closer to the actual day. Student transportation, as I mentioned, all of the mitigation strategies stay the same. Updated guidance, actually, there's a lot of research about the airflow and air exchange on the vehicles with windows open. So windows are going to remain open. Certainly a lot easier as we get here to some warmer weather eventually. Doesn't seem like it's there yet. So masks still on, still sanitizing on the way in the bus, still assigned seats, but it is back to 2 students per seat. And again, to reiterate one more time, we have the capacity to transport all of our students in families that select that. Middle school and high school extracurriculars, we've been running them. In the athletics, obviously we've been talking about that. There are extracurriculars, some running remotely, some running in person. We'll continue to do that, expand where we can, whenever possible, as the regulations and as the situation allows. Elementary Kids Club and after school programs, we are not going to be able to run those for the balance of this year. The majority of those resources for Kids Club and any of the other explorations programming have been dispersed into remote academy classrooms and other places to make sure that we're able to run all of the programming. So we don't have the staffing, and rather than scrambling to potentially try and find staffing, that it wouldn't be the same because we would be training all new staff. The ability to get that off the ground is just highly unlikely this spring. So we're saying that won't run at the current time for the balance of this year. Fully anticipate that coming back for next school year when we assume everything's shifting back to normal and everyone goes back to their normal job, quote unquote. Special education 504 services, certainly as a general rule, bringing students into school more often is easier for us to provide the services that those students need. So as a general rule, that's a good thing. By and large, it increases our capacity to provide the services. That second paragraph there, it's important. We've had a lot of discussions about IEP meetings and holding meetings remotely. We've said all along, as much as we possibly can, everything we're doing is focusing on making sure that we can keep kids in school for the balance of this year. That is our focus, getting kids in and keeping them in through the balance of this year. So with that focus, we're still going to do all the meetings that we possibly can. If we can do it remotely, we're going to do it remotely. So you name it. Same discussion about extracurriculars and kids club. If that's the expense, that's okay for us because our focus is on putting every resource we have to get kids back and keep them back. So IEP meetings, by and large, the vast majority of discussions I've had with folks, families have loved IEP meetings being held remotely because it means they don't have to drive from Boston to join a meeting. They can join from Boston and it's an hour and a half and then they're right back at work or wherever they are. So we are going to continue to pursue remote meetings whenever possible. Obviously, if it has to be in person, we would make that adjustment. Changes to the remote academy. I will say it 5, 10, 17 times. Anyone who is in the remote academy can stay in the remote academy. Sorry, the host just muted me. I don't know who the host is. So anyone who's, I'll just say it one more time in case I was muted and just mouthing. Anyone who's in the remote academy can stay in the remote academy. Anyone who is not in the remote academy can also join the remote academy. Anyone who's in the remote academy can choose to return to full in-person learning. So all families will have a choice to make for their students when we make these shifts, that they can make a decision of how their student will learn for the balance of this year. So just to make that clear, elementary will stay the same, K through 6, they are intact, separate remote classes. So if a student is leaving hybrid learning and moving to the remote academy rather than going full in person, they would be changing teachers. Similarly, if they're in the remote academy returning to full in person, they would be changing teachers. At the middle school, we'll actually have 2 options. There are currently separate 7th and 8th grade classes learning remotely. We'll now have the ability to have students who are currently in hybrid learning who decide to go, family chooses remote, to continue streaming those classes with a long-term commitment, saying this is what I'm choosing all day, every day for my child's learning. And similar to the high school, we have the Florida Virtual Academy. There are many who we've spoken with who will stay there. There were some who will request a shift, and there are others who are in hybrid and may not be comfortable, especially at that secondary level, moving back to full in person. So they will have the option to stream into their classes. So that is, as Narissa mentioned, that is part of the MOU that we agreed with the teachers, certainly appreciative of their willingness to agree that. So students will have the same access to new content, review content, class discussions as appropriate when they're happening. And students will have that choice, families will have that choice to make for their students. So again, we're gonna ask everyone to make a choice. Anyone who's in the remote academy can just say, I'm staying, and there's nothing else they need to do. Or if families are moving back and forth, we'll certainly work with them to make sure that they're assigned and their questions are answered. Home stretch, timeline. So depending on the outcome of tonight, I will send out a message tomorrow, do a little quick video summary just to make it as easy as possible, give the highlights, and share that information. I will have, in that email that I've drafted, there's a link to a form. So after people read this in its entirety, cover to cover, stem to stern, all of it, every word we wrote, after it's completely read and studied, if there are still questions, there is going to be, in that email that I'll send tomorrow, there'll be a link, just a quick Google form to submit questions. So any questions that we gather by Monday, we're going to create some quick, maybe it'll just be me, maybe it will be some other people, we'll see, generate some quick Q&A, question and answer videos, just kind of those highlight questions that folks still have. And then by Wednesday of next week, we'll send out a message that will have those videos Again, the plan is the plan. Have those videos with those kind of common questions, and then a link to a form where we'll ask families to commit by next Friday their choice. Again, 2 options: full remote, full in person. There'll be 2 options, a couple questions to identify, and this will be a commitment. So we'll be asking families to commit. If someone commits on Friday and changes their mind on Monday, are we going to throw a fit? Of course not. We'll work with the family. But by and large, we're asking for a commitment on Friday. And then beyond that point, it would be up to 4 weeks. It may not take 4 weeks, but because of the planning and pacing, if someone's moving out of remote into in person, what have you, it could take up to 4 weeks. So that will give us the time that gives us the full following week before the K through 8 shifts back, and a full 2 weeks to make the transition, especially for those kids who might be moving from Florida virtual to the classroom setting, to make all of those provisions, to make sure we have everything set. Bus routes, we know the balance is right. Everyone who's coming back has a seat on the bus, etc. So then Monday, April 5th, and I have to give a quick update. So on Monday, April 5th, we are planning, that is currently on the calendar, that is a half day. So we are planning that's a half day as we have planned it, but we're planning it as a fully remote day. So that will be the final opportunity for teachers to work largely synchronous, I would imagine, all grade levels, working with families, getting all of the final details set. A condensed schedule on that Monday, traditional early release at 10:42 and 11:40, half day, afternoon off, planning day, the final PD that's in the calendar on Tuesday the 6th. K through 8 returns in full, walks through the door on Wednesday the 7th. One caveat, and this is a bad assumption on my part, been having lots of conversations about that Monday morning. There's 2 hours and 45 minutes of learning time. The discussion with the Department of Ed has been that it's part of a larger plan, and we're obviously bringing middle school and high school back on a much more aggressive timetable than they're requiring. It was a don't worry about it. And now technically they've asked me to just document that would be a waiver for those 2 hours and 45 minutes that technically, because it's happening on the day that they said it has to shift. So I believe in all my discussions, it's a belt and suspenders approach. I don't think there's going to be an issue with it whatsoever. However, just to mention to you that I learned not very long ago, quite literally, that I did submit that. It's a waiver. It's an email to Rob Curtin to note that, in that if that were the case, the option would be to shift it back, have the half day on Friday and the professional day on Monday. That Friday is Good Friday. That is certainly a conflict for many staff who would take that off as a holy day. So that's certainly not ideal, in that would be a conflict for many staff in regards to that half day and then that opportunity to do the planning in the afternoon. So as of right now, we're going to move forward on the assumption, because I believe it will not be an issue, that Monday, April 5th is the half day, fully remote. Tuesday, professional learning day, one more time. That doesn't impact the last day of school. We baked, if you will, 2 extra days into the final day of school. We just never placed it on the calendar. So this is the second of those 2 days. So as of right now, I think I said it incorrectly 2 meetings ago or a meeting ago, I had said Friday the 18th. It's actually Thursday the 17th, because the second weather day was a remote learning day. So right now, although I just watched the weather and what's going on Friday, but it's snowing on Friday morning. But right now, as of right now, Thursday the 17th is the last day. Any days that happen before the 31st of March have to be made up. Once we get to April 1st, that's it. None of the days have to be made up. So over the next couple of weeks, if Friday turned into a snow day, that would have to be, I don't think it's going to turn into a snow day, but that would have to adjust. But as of right now, it's Thursday the 17th. For the high school, proposal is to follow that same Monday and Tuesday routine, half day Monday, fully remote, Tuesday, no school. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday will be a typical hybrid rotation. That allows us to have the full middle school and in essence, half the high school in the building. There are all kinds of logistics that led to this, from second dose appointments for vaccines that could take a lot of people out of commission to just the logistics of bringing an entire campus back. When we started looking at the details, it just made sense to try it out for 3 days, that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, with the entirety of the middle school and half the high school in hybrid, so that we can just get a 300 student input, influx of students on that campus, make sure the systems work for those 3 days, and then introduce the rest of the high school on Monday, April 12th. Can't end with an but I believe that's it. It was probably significantly more than highlights.
Yeah, a little bit. All good. Questions from the committee or comments from the committee? Go ahead, Maureen.
So Brian, if we could just go back a second to the waiver for that Monday, the 5th, for the 2.5 hours. So you said that you submitted, it just has to go in an email form and that's already been submitted. You're on mute.
Sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, so that was in my conversations. The request was to formally, I had been communicating, and the request was just submitted as a formal waiver. It's the same email address that I was even going back and forth with various DESE staff, but they said formally requested as a waiver. Again, I don't want to speak for DESE. I don't believe it's going to be an issue, but as a formal process, because technically that Monday is the first day, they should, I should document it.
Okay, and this might be a silly question, but how quickly do you think that they will review that and get back to you to make sure that that's not an issue?
Standard response is 5 business days. I definitely ventured into begging that as soon as possible, whatever I need to do, come to Malden and have a meeting, whatever it takes to get a response sooner rather than later. My guess is that I will be communicating with families based on this plan. Not saying anything about that because I think it's a very slight chance, and if we have to adjust that as soon as we know.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I'll just note on that too, when Brian and I were talking about putting in a waiver, I mean, it could have school committee approval. According to the documentation, it doesn't have to have school committee approval. So, I mean, Brian went with it, but I don't know if the school committee wants to officially approve that tonight or just kind of let it go. I didn't see a strong need to, given that this was in the plan that was coming here tonight.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think it needs any. I mean, that's just my opinion, but it's 2.5 hours, so.
Yeah, I agree.
2 hours and 45 minutes, just to be clear. Just want to make sure every minute counts.
We know. All right, other questions or comments from the committee? Paul Goldner.
There's a couple of grade levels that indicate there's not extra room for students to transition back. Do you have sort of a contingency plan in case more students do transition back to full in-person at those grade levels?
Yes, so that's so those have been identified, and they're not called out, but you certainly can tease that out in the summary in the back there. Yes, we have to wait and see, but we definitely have contingency plans in place to move staff around. Part of that would be if there are classes shrinking within the remote academy. We're not changing. We're not collapsing classes in the hybrid full in person or in the remote. Making this happen. But in order, if classes get to the point where there's only 2 students in a remote class, we would have to address that just from a logistical standpoint. And if we move that class to full in person and it's just 7 students in a class and there's greater distancing, and so a family's comfortable with that, so we would have to work with those on a case-by-case basis. But yes, we've identified potential staff that could be shifted in those cases if need be. And we've also talked about if a whole remote classroom decided that they wanted to try in person, and it ended up being the perfect agreement. Everyone talked and wanted to do it. If I took a 3rd grade classroom, it might be a Pine Grove school teacher, but there are students from Salisbury and Newbury and Pine Grove in that class. So we would just move that class potentially back to the home school where the teacher is and move those students there with them if that was the choice they wanted to make. Again, we're not going to force that, but we would remain flexible if there were decisions made where, you know, as a whole class, the teacher and everyone decided that it made sense to shift remote, then we could facilitate that too. So we're planning for all the potential what ifs, and I certainly would say that is by far the most challenging thing because we won't know until people fully commit.
All right, other questions? Erin.
Can you share with us just a little bit so people can hear how contact tracing is going to shift with the changes on the bus and in the classrooms?
So it won't change how we contact trace. It would just mean that more students are end up being close contacts. So we have always taken the at 6 feet or less. There are some districts who, when they use 6 foot distancing, they consider the individuals at that 6 foot perimeter not a close contact. We've said it's 6 feet or in. So those students sitting, if I'm in a high school classroom, I've got a student to my right, my left, front and back. Those 4 students currently are close contacts if I was a positive. So obviously at 3 feet, it doesn't exactly double, just by the way math works, but it definitely increases the number of close contacts we will have for each positive case. So the tracing will follow the same process. It will still be 6 feet or in for 15 or more cumulative minutes are considered.
And then on the bus, we're going from every other seat, 1 individual to 2 people per seat. So that's going to change that too, right?
Just numbers wise. Yep.
Numbers
yep.
wise.
The same. So we weren't 6 feet already. It was 1 per seat, and they were, I don't know what you call that, shifted to opposite ends of the seat as you go back. And so we already generally had, it's only been a 1 or 2 times, but when the cases happened on the bus, there were generally 2 close contacts. It tended to be, again, depending where it is, 2 to 3. So that would expand to likely be the 2 behind, the 2 in front, the 1 in the seat, plus the 1 across the aisle, if it was a student against the window. So it would increase the numbers for sure. And again, just to reiterate, even if you're masked, you're considered a close contact. So if you're within 6 feet and masked, as we are properly, that likely provides far greater protection, but still we consider anyone at 6 feet or within to be a close contact.
Do you have other questions, Erin?
I do, but I want to give other people a chance too. So
go ahead and finish them out, and then we'll move around.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the tent use too, please? I know that you did share that you anticipate recess or snack time at the elementary level, and then potentially additional space for people to do outdoor learning. How do you see the multiple people looking to use the space at the same time, or how is that going to look?
Yep. So at the elementary, there is going to be no scheduled use for lunches at the present time. So at the middle school and the high school, we know we need that as extended cafeteria space. At the elementaries, they were able to, at Pine Grove and at Salisbury, utilize the stage as extended cafeteria space. And so they were able to get everyone enough seats so every class can fit in there as a full grade level. I should say every grade, not every class. Every grade level can fit there during their lunch at a minimum of 6 feet, in some cases more, all facing the same direction as they previously were. So for elementaries, we don't need them for lunch. So it allows them to be less restrictive. The discussion has been to date that it would be used for snack time, recess, on a rotating basis. I'm sure some schools would use it more regularly and schedule it regularly. Some may drop in, and then outside of those recess times, I'm assuming they would schedule it for classes that want to go out and use the space. So it's not going to be, obviously it's going to be seats, right? It's not going to be seats like it is at the middle school and high school, set up like a cafeteria. So it'd be far more flexible space, but there wouldn't be seating out there necessarily unless it was moved back and forth. So we purchased 2. They should be in, I believe the middle school, high school is this week. Elementary is next week, Kyle, is that right? So again, the middle school, high school with a critical, because that's how we will serve lunch. But if after a couple of weeks they are utilized and we need more, we can always purchase more.
Okay, and how does it work with the tents for the lunch in bad weather? The kids are able to get outside carrying their lunch out there with them without getting soaking wet if it's raining?
I mean, we don't have enough umbrellas to hand to them, and it will be I don't know the distance, 100 feet, 75 feet. They'll actually be in the parking lot, the rear parking lot up by the softball field. So they'll actually be installed on the pavement. So in weather, it's not, in mud. So they're walking out of the cafeteria, basically under those trees into the tent. So yes, they would likely get wet a little bit, but it would be a pretty short distance. They're not on the other side of the softball field.
On the attendance piece of it, for the students that are opting for fullback and are not coming to school in person, what does that mean for advancement for them? Is there specific parameters that we're looking for as a target to make sure for individuals this year? Or were we given any sort of allowances or waivers if someone's not in school for a certain number of days?
So we have the regular tardiness laws, right? So when students are absent for a set number of days, we are required to notify them. Certainly at this time, the priority is finding a way to get them in. If they're out at that level, then we're going to talk about, let's talk about shifting to the full-time remote academy, right? If it's become a routine thing, we can have that discussion with the family. If it's got sick for a couple days and then need to make up some work and come back, that happens on a routine basis like we normally would in any year. But there's certainly no different guidance from DESE, and there's no different regulations in regards to attendance.
And that's the same thing for full-time remote kids, that you expect them to log in and participate.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Sorry, if you want to ask somebody else, Narissa, I'm just scrolling through the rest of my pages. Okay.
Absolutely. Who else has questions on the committee? Anybody? All right, I'll throw in a couple of mine. So, Brian, I know we talked about this a lot, but social, emotional, and mental health. I just want to get back to that because we know, obviously, and when we ran when Student Council ran the high school survey in the fall, there were a lot of students that had anxieties about being in person and safety concerns. And I know, we had kind of an uptick in need in the fall just based on isolation and students that were feeling that, but it's likely, definitely the pandemic has an effect on people with anxiety around just safety and cleanliness and catching COVID. Can you just talk about additional supports that will be put in place to help support students through the rest of the year?
So in regards to specific staff, we have an added staff that will be there to support students. I know in talking to Patrick, and we can certainly provide an update in a future meeting with more detail. There's certainly a different approach. We have it's not the BRIGHT program, it's the Bridge program. We put a CAP program in place this year, additional supports for students who are struggling. And so all of those resources are going to be focused on the BRIGHT staff, LICSW's educators, focused on those students who are struggling to return. Beyond that, right? So then there's the obvious students who aren't able to make it through the door. And then I mentioned that earlier, the students who will walk in and are going to look completely fine and put together. So we have work to do in regards to making sure that we as a district, we as a staff are understanding of that it is going to be hard. I will say it, and I'm sure every educator would say it. It is going to be really hard as a teacher for them to have all students back in their classroom and not think, awesome, we got 10 weeks to go, you know, this is what we do. And that's going to be a hard thing. And so it's going to be a constant discussion about just pumping the brakes. The MCAS is going to happen. Not often do you hear me say, I don't care about the MCAS, right? That's not important this year. So, I mean, all of these things that we can say, it's just not important. Don't worry about it. We have to do it because we have to check the box, but it's not important this year. So there has to be a lot of discussion like that. And I mean, the very thing that makes our educators so amazing and wanting to do everything they can to make sure they do everything right by our students is going to be a struggle for them to make sure that we kind of pump the brakes. So that's going to be our constant reminder that it's an all hands on deck.
I will say, Brian, that I met with the principals yesterday, and they talked about they are developing some special programs, or I don't want to say interventions or supports that they are going to put in place for that transition. For example, at one of the schools, each of the students identified an adult within the school that they would connect with. And so almost like a mentor program as an adult to child. I know that Patrick is working to develop a survey where he can kind of dipstick into the student body to find out how they feel about going back and what supports or resources they would need to feel more comfortable, because we know that particularly that age group on our last survey had the most apprehensive kind of viewpoint about heading back for them. So it's absolutely in their radar, and they are and continue to make plans to support their students and their staff actually as they make this transition back. It's just kind of definitely not open doors and business as usual. They're absolutely being sensitive to the fact of kids are going to come back, and adults as well, with varying degrees of support needed.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. And I'm glad you said that, because I feel like, you know, it's we talk about the students struggling on the return, right? I mean, there's a lot of anxiety and apprehension on staff too. So it's it's easy to say that don't worry about it, you're halfway vaccinated, but when all of a sudden you have 10 bodies in your room at very close distance, that's hard. So it's anxiety producing all around for sure.
Sure. That was going to be my next question. And but to go back real quick, I mean, I'm assuming we still have funds left in grants. I know it's been kind of like, we've got money coming from here, we've got money coming from there, and it's getting spent out in different directions. If we do need to bring in some contracted help of some sort, additional ears for students to talk to, staff to talk to, whatever is needed on that side, we still have funding for that? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You want to say, Kyle?
Oh, no, I was going to say absolutely, yes. So the SR2 funding that came out a little while back, was that 500,000? A pool left in there, or that was 850,000, I apologize. And then we should be finding out very shortly our allocation relative to the latest round of legislation, the COVID relief that was just passed at a federal level last week.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. I haven't seen an accounting since we bought all those additional desks and the tents and stuff like that. So I wasn't sure what was left after that, but that's good there.
So if I can just say, so it's not often that we get to say money's not going to be the object, right? Money is not going to be the problem here, right? Anyone who has looked for a therapist for their child or themselves is struggling to find, there aren't a lot of clinicians with available time and space in their calendar. So, so can we pay for those resources? Absolutely. Will we go do our best to find them? Absolutely. But it is a very limited resource right now in regards to healthcare professionals, mental health care professionals, I should say.
Understood. Thank you. All right. I'll put my questions on hold. It looks like Paulise is next.
I just have one quick question, Brian. The question was raised about additional staffing or staffing in general to help with children at the high school level experiencing anxiety. There had been talk a while back about additional hall monitors to help with distancing and stuff. I mean, that could be an extra set of eyes on the children, that are experiencing, extensive anxiety. And, maybe in the course of training, hall monitors or whatever, that could be a goal.
Absolutely.
Fill that out.
And that is currently posted. Anyone interested, $15 an hour. Go to the Triton webpage, look under employment opportunities. There is a posting that anyone can apply, $15 an hour. Each school has its own posting, so you can choose which school you would like to be a monitor for. Plug done. Yes. We'd love to have lots of those, right? Again, with the resources that we have, we would love nothing more than to have monitors that are in the halls. And to your point, Paul, it may not be, you don't have to be a mental health professional, right? Just to have that person, to have students see someone who's responsible for, keep it moving, kids, take a step back. I think it's reassuring for everyone to see that presence in the halls, for sure.
Yes. All right, thank you. Erin.
Thanks, Narissa. Brian, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask the question anyways. On the Monday schedule, that includes the remote kids. So the 90 minutes at the end of the day, it's not asynchronous learning doing their specials on Monday afternoons, but everybody's going to have it's going to be like a partial day.
Yes, I'm glad you asked that, just to clarify that. Yeah, so the early release is early release for all students. Yes.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the use of the gym space at the middle school, high school area? Will we still be utilizing the bleachers for lunches? And does that conflict with the increase in the gym class size? With having space or overflow or interactions, that sort of thing?
So it does not conflict. They're able to, the gym classes are obviously much smaller, but at present, the high school will need the real cafeteria, we'll call it the tent cafeteria, the bleachers and the auditorium to make sure that they're appropriately distanced. It will vary. And I'm assuming, I don't know this, I don't want to speak out of turn, but Patrick's continuing looking at the movement and the adjustments with the student numbers. So I don't know if the gym is preferable to the auditorium or the auditorium is preferable. So if there was one space that freed up, but they've worked around any conflicts. The work that Patrick and I'll say the entire high school had to do to look at the logistics of making sure the class sizes had an appropriate space for the class size to meet. Significant logistics, but they have worked through everything, and there are no conflicts that that stop anything from happening.
Okay, and just another question about PE or gym. Now that we're going back in and essentially doubling the number of kids that are going to be in at a particular point in time, I'm assuming that those classes are going to get larger. We still have enough space for them to do the activities, that sort of thing, without any issues.
Yep. So in the back, I don't forget who it was that asked the question, but there are rooms that say there is either no extra in the feasibility, the summary by school in the back.
Yeah.
There are some classes that say there is no capacity. So there are certainly spots where we're watching and we know we have to have a plan B, but the vast majority of spaces, we do have capacity. If the entire of the remote academy shifted back, we would have to be shifting teachers to accommodate that, right? So that's where, if it happened, I don't anticipate that. I think that by and large, even if you believe in full in-person learning, I know I've spoken with families who they've committed to the remote academy and they're going to stay with that because that's the right thing for just consistency for the final 2.5 months of the year. So I think largely the remote academy will stay intact. But if it were to have a mass exodus, we would have to do some readjusting and shift classrooms back. And then there were classroom spaces where those teachers used to teach. So.
Okay, and yeah, and I was looking at the capacity pieces of it, and I know that we talked about this before, and I really thought I took a note on it over the summer about the gym class was going to be 10 feet, that sort of thing. That's why I'm bringing it up again, just to make sure that the 6 feet is okay and that they're able to do what they need to do to be able to maintain their distance with the increased numbers.
So the gym, and we should have done that differently in the little facilities assessment in the back. Anything with increased respiration, and I touched on that briefly, Woodwind instruments has to have a bell cover and a special mask. Singing can now be done with a soft voice and a mask. Gym, all of those still require the 10-foot distancing. So if it's those activities in those locations, those regulations or those guidelines still prevail. None of the guidance on all of those, I think they call it specialized classes needing specialized restriction, that all stays intact.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Darren, questions from other folks? So one thing I just wanted to raise, Brian, the on the desktop that came out last Friday, maybe, yeah, it would have been Friday, from DESE actually had a section in it. I forget what the word they used, but I think it was like discourage. They're discouraging the use of plexiglass dividers because there is increased risk there. And I know that's something that's included in the plan. Are there options in that there, I mean, I have to be honest, DESE's been much less cautious than other institutions in setting forward guidance. In that this is one they're specifically calling out about being cautious about. I wondered if you had another plan instead of plexiglass. I know obviously this was already in the works when that on the desktop came out.
So that specifically advises against plexiglass use in cafeterias. So that's it's not in general because of the increase the requirement to sanitize between each use. So currently we're not using those. All of we talked about that early on. I think probably last week I did say we would need to, because we were able to Pine Grove and Salisbury expanded up to the stage. They were able to move everything around and get the 6 feet distancing, so they're not using plexiglass dividers. We have them a couple places for art. So again, a little less messy. It's the cafeteria and foods and touching that is the greatest concern. They still need to be sanitized. So they're not necessary the way we have them set up. They were a little closer, so we were mitigating that. So that is something we're looking at. So we're going to get them. We have them to use them. DESE suggests or advises against them because the requirement to sanitize. So as long as we're sanitizing them, it's a non-issue. Their issue is an entire cafeteria of 100 kids to use the dividers. It's the requirement that you've got to sanitize them between each use. That was their big concern. And because districts were kind of throwing the distancing out the window and just separating kids with the divider and thinking that was doing the same thing. So where we would be in the art room, the kids would be masked versus in the cafeteria. So that's my understanding in all the discussions that have been around that.
Okay. So I'm actually looking at page 11 where it's talking about school meals and cafeterias, and it still says plexiglass dividers in there. Maybe that just needs to come out. Maybe that's been something that's been resolved since.
Yep. So you
It's
said
the very last sentence on that page.
So that says if and when that happens, we would have to. So there could be the potential, right? So that's still on the table. We would have to have a plan to be able to sanitize them between use.
Okay.
So we would have the 6 feet. DESE talks about putting people at 3 feet unmasked using dividers. That's their concern. If we were at 6 feet, but had to face one another, we would use the plexiglass dividers as the only solution, right? And we would only do that where we know we're able to sanitize them between each lunch.
Okay. I'll go back, come back on that one. I have to go back to the guidance, I guess, and read it again. But I got the impression that they were talking about airflow and other things and being a part of that, and not just the disinfectant, but not something we need to get bogged down in tonight. I'll make a note of that for myself. I guess I don't know if anyone else has questions before we go into actual discussion. Seeing none, I'm going to ask you, just like we normally do when we're talking through decisions on making votes, for you to, provide some feedback and your thoughts on this before we take a vote, please. For Maureen. I know she's going to go first because she's such a trooper. She always does. Sorry, Maureen. The trials of being vice chair.
It's okay. That's all right. I don't have really any other, questions. I just, I guess I just want to say, how thankful I am to Brian and Kim and Kyle and Dave and all our principals, because I know they have worked so hard on this. And it's just, I'm just amazed at how every detail has been thoroughly thought out, and I really appreciate that. I'd also like to, just sort of give a sort of a thank you to the TRTA, because as a member of PNN, I sat with them in our meetings, Paul and I, and we wouldn't be here if we didn't have them too. And they've been wonderful to work with, and, have sort of wanted to do whatever they could to do what's best for our students. So I just feel it's important to mention that as well. There's been a lot of negative talk out there about the teachers unions, and I can assure the Triton community that is not our teachers union. So I just want to make sure I said that, and I'm definitely in support of this plan as Brian presented tonight.
Well put about the teachers union too. That's a good point that we do not say often enough. Thank you, Maureen. Looks like Linda's volunteering to go next.
Yes, I am. I also want to thank everybody. It's a true statement. It takes a village, and it truly did take a village to get this plan in place. I'm thankful that we were able to make sure that our teachers were at least have one vaccination shot before they have to go back. I want to also thank, Maureen's thanked everybody, and I think she's absolutely right in the teachers union. But I'd also like to thank our school committee as well. We put in a lot of hours as well, and it's been an extraordinary year for all of us, parents, students, staff, and for the kids to be going back now. It's a great feeling to see the kids go back now. I don't really have anything else to say, that I'm in approval of the plan as well.
Thank you, Linda. Who else? Come on, guys, I go last, so. Paul Mayette.
I probably had the most concerns last week, and I still maintain that for the state to dictate a defiance of the CDC guidelines without pushing for full vaccination is egregious. And I thought long and hard about it, but I've decided this is not the place for that particular fight, discussion, call it what you will. I don't think we could possibly have a better plan than this. I read through it. I was impressed with the depth. I was impressed with the serious, it wasn't just paying lip service to the SEL and to the emotional needs of students and teachers, but students particularly. It made it important. It put it at the top of the list, and I appreciated that. In addition, I also, in our discussions last night, it was very clear that both the administration and the TRTA were pitching in to see what they could do to make this work. It didn't appear to be this terrible give and take. It was I could see, even not having been in negotiations, what was put forth to help. And so I also really, I think, Brian, you wrote well within that document, or whoever was writing particular passages. I don't know who had what in there, but just in the need for knowing what's going to go forth, the consistency. And so, clearly there were circumstances that I wish were different, but for the circumstances that we have, for the given situation that we find ourselves in, I don't think we could do better than this. So I just want to congratulate everybody on what you put together. It's just so much more reassuring. I feel so much more reassured than I did last week.
Thank you, Paul. Caitlin.
And I always end up going after Paul, and he did so well. Paul, thank you. But you're a hard act to follow, sir. I'm in support of the plan. I don't want to say the word excited, but I'm going to say the word excited that we got to this point, and this document takes into account every single piece of anxiety that the students and the teachers have had up to date. And the fact that the entire Triton community was able to come together and be heard in this document. And there's parent choice involved between remote and streaming. And it's just an exciting thing to read and see and have it put into place. So I thank everyone that came together, voiced their opinions, made their concerns known, and then allowed the Triton administration to put this document together with all of that in place. So I don't think it could be any better. So thank you to everyone that made it happen.
You, Caitlin. Paul Lees, you are up next.
Yep. I'm going to be very short. I support the plan primarily because it allows families to have a choice, at least for this year. What will happen next year remains to be seen. But I support it for that reason. And I want to applaud the teachers union for coming forward, despite what's going on in other teachers unions in the state. Ours was very supportive, and you couldn't ask for more. And it's not to say that 100% of the teachers are on board with this plan. And if there's any omission in this plan, it's just that we can't provide for all of the teachers to work in the circumstance that best fits their personal needs. And I want to call that out. I think the administration did the best job they could. I know we tried the best we could. And so I think most of the teachers are fully in support of this. Some may opt to or wish that they could teach in a different capacity, but it's just not in the cards right now. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Paul. I'm not sure if Paul or Tina was next, but let's go with Paul Goldner.
First, I want to say, Brian, thank you for putting this together and your team for putting this together. It's pretty clear that you've done the work to find what needs to be done. The other thing I want to say is thank you for acknowledging that MCAS maybe is going to have to be less of a priority this year. This is going to be another shift in what teaching and learning looks like this year. And like all of those shifts, it takes time for the teachers and the students to adapt to it. And with only 9 or 10 weeks to go, depending on which level you're at, and then the close of the year at the end of that time, there's not a lot of time in the middle. And that social emotional component is got to be the priority for many, many, many of the students. We're going to be experiencing classes of 18, 20 students for the first time in over a year.
Thank you, Paul. Tina?
I just want to say quickly too that it's been quite a year, and I'm really proud. I hope that our community members realize how fortunate they are to have the administration that we do and how thoughtful everyone's been. But to keep it short, I'm in support of the plan as well. I think it's time to try to go back. And I just thank Brian and his team for all the efforts that they've put together. That's it.
Thank you, Tina. Anybody else? All right, I get to be last. So I also thank you, Brian, and the entire group that worked to put this together. Obviously, this is a solid plan, well thought out. I think I guess I'll go back to Paul Mayette and say I don't understand why the 5th is the date, right? It was pulled out of thin air, apropos to nothing. In my personal preference, right, we would have to a number of people's points, 2 vaccinations in arms. The CDC numbers would have had more time to hopefully come down, although they're actually headed in the wrong direction right now. So hopefully they do come back down. And I think, having those things start to fall in place would make parents a little bit more comfortable, because while a number of them opted in the survey to put their students as, indicating that they would be going full in person, I know there are a lot of parents that have kind of concerns about that, feel like it's rushed, and wishing that they had a little bit more time where more outdoor space could be used more easily, where we weren't facing, snowstorms still potentially, that type of thing. That said, we're up against a wall here, I think. We don't have a lot of options. We do have a solid plan. So that's where we're at. And I would encourage the committee, I think, to this is one of the things I wanted to bring up, is we actually don't have a meeting until mid-April. I would encourage the committee to stay a little bit more on top of this, I think, and not wait until mid-April to come back and get updates and kind of see where progress is being made and where issues might lie, especially after the first week or so, as we're getting feedback from folks. And hopefully funneling that through, although I know a lot of that is kind of one-offs here and there, whereas those come through. So that said, I am in support of this as well. I think it's as solid as it gets. I just wish the timing wasn't forced in the way that it is, because I think it's nonsensical. We're meeting an arbitrary deadline, and I think that's unfortunate. Any other discussion? Can I get a motion, please? Maureen? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I'll make a
Maureen,
motion. No, I was
discussion
just raising my hand to make a motion, so. No, I'll make a motion to approve the plan for return to full in-person learning for K through 8 as presented.
I'll second it.
I'll second.
12.
I'm sorry, K through 12, geez. I was thinking of the first week. Anyway,
Let's do it all. Yeah,
let's do it all. K through 12
Please.
as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. Was that Erin?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Erin, oh gosh, I see here. Hang on. Okay. Maureen, Erin. Okay. Any discussion? I need a roll call vote, please. Erin.
Yes.
Paul Goldner.
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
Caitlin.
Yes.
Paul Lees.
Yes.
Linda.
Yes.
Paul Mayette.
Yes.
Ina.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So that passes. I do have a follow-up question for the committee based on that vote. We have been meeting or emailing with the data review group. This essentially puts us under state. The state would have to make a decision, right, to change the model after those dates go into effect. We can still continue to engage the data review group, if there are special instances, something that we want to discuss them on, but I wanted to see from the committee if they feel there's any point for that group to continue on those check-ins. Because I don't want to pull in people that we don't need to be pulling in if we don't need to. Anybody have objections to kind of setting those weekly ones aside and just engaging them if there's a need? Please.
Could we do it bi-weekly? I hate to set that monitoring aside when everyone's going back in full time. I don't think that's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, the dashboard will still be updated and everything. We can just do a check-in bi-weekly to see if people have concerns, if the committee wants that. I mean, I guess my worry about that is there's really no action left to be taken.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy that. I mean, Brian is the superintendent. If he makes a decision to close the school down, that's his decision. I still think this is a matter of local rule. I agree that we are following the state's mandate about return to classes, but you know, they walk the fence whenever they want. They want to control us, they say this. They don't want to control us, they go silent. It's still a matter of local control as far as I'm concerned. And I put the support and the decision-making in Brian's hands. That's how I feel about it. I think the committee has an obligation to continue to be updated, because if health concerns change drastically due to full in-person, we need to know about it.
Okay.
I would just,
Anyone else on
I was going to say the nurses and Kristen Jolivet. I mean, anytime there's a case, obviously the prevalence has dropped way back, and it's every handful of days now, and not multiple each day. But we remain in communication, so I don't think it's a bad thing to have that. I think often you'll kick it off with an email, Narissa, to just say, "Hey, anyone thoughts? Anyone see anything? Any concerning trends?" And everyone has an opportunity. And if it's a quick email, no, we're good. Here's what we're thinking. I don't think it's a bad thing just to keep the check-in going.
Okay. Any objections to moving to bi-weekly then? All right, seeing none. So that was my one follow-up on that. Okay. Moving on to review of COVID policies, and policy and advocacy. I've been working on this, and we have one more change from today, I believe. So I'm going to send that on over to Linda.
Yes, in the packet, you were given the creation of general policies on COVID-related issues. That hasn't changed, other than we added what the DESE changed the guideline to April 5th. So there's no change on that. But on the face coverings, we added on the face coverings a close-fitting, multi-layered face mask, and surgical masks are acceptable for use in schools. Today we got a change from MASC, and all it is on the bottom where the legal references are. It has, sorry, I have my notes here. Where it says the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Second Education reopening guidelines, that has been crossed off. And it now says Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education guidance on in-person learning. And also the date has changed from August 2020 to March 2021. So those are the only changes that were made. So what I'd like to do is ask that.
Can we just clarify too, Linda, that the change that MASC made was because DESE used to require masks for grade 2 and above, but not for the youngest students. Again, going back to like DESE's not been the most cautious organization as far as guidance. Triton adopted to require masks for pre-K through 12. Essentially, anybody that enters our buildings, with a couple of limitations, should be wearing a mask. So in the most recent reopening guidance, DESE did change their guidance to actually align with what we've been using. And that's why we don't have to make any further changes. It's just the reference that's getting updated, because we don't have a language update. We're already using guidance that they've now moved to. Sorry, just wanted to clarify about that, because it's.
No, that's fine. I didn't say that only because our policy had already included the younger students. So, but I appreciate you elaborating on that. Those were the only changes that were to this face covering policy. So what I'm just going to ask is that we approve this policy as amended with those new changes. It's a second reading, so on the next meeting, it'll come back with those changes put in place. And then we'll vote on it as a full committee is accepting it.
Yeah. So do you want to make the motion, Linda? Do you have an agenda in front of you? If not, I can read it off.
If you could read it off, that would be great.
Can I get a motion to review and approve policies EBCFA and EBC supplemental as amended by the Policy and Advocacy Subcommittee as a first reading?
I'll make that motion.
I so move.
Okay. And who is that, Paul Matt?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Any discussion on this? All right. Seeing none, we need a roll call vote, please. Erin,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Paul Lees,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Tina.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes as well. So that passes. Anything else, Linda? That was it, right?
No, I think that was all.
Okay. Thank you. On to high school final exams. Is that, I thought I saw Patrick come in. Is he here for that, or are you handling that, Brian?
I was going to handle that. It was short and sweet, and I believe he is around if we need to grab him. It is, I was going to say, ta-da. Do you want to speak to that, Patrick? We both agreed we weren't going to say much because if either of the two of us talk, it's going to be a half an hour. It's short and sweet. The program coordinators, high school administration decided, similar to the midterm exams, this is not the year for final exams. So you want to expand on that, Patrick?
That's about it. We had been talking really all year about whether or not we felt like exams made sense given everything else that was going on. Certainly, as you have been speaking about for the last half hour, 45 minutes, that social emotional concern as students are transitioning back and where we want to focus our time, efforts, and energy isn't in large scale testing. We want to focus on going back and doubling down on relationship building, and we're quite frankly going to need the time to do that. And the best way to spend the time isn't in preparation for exams or taking those exams. We feel like we can better use the time doing other things and focusing on more meaningful learning experiences on top of it. So that's where we wanted to spend our time and our energy and where we want to move forward. And what I'm requesting is just around a change to the calendar to facilitate that.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. And I would, I know I've heard Maureen say it a couple of times, but I would commend you for this decision, and the program coordinators, I know you mentioned in your letter, had kind of brought this up because obviously exams are a huge source of stress, and nobody needs any more on top of where we're already at, I think. So, all right. Any questions from the committee? All right. Seeing none, can we move, thank you, Patrick. Can we move on to the 2020-2021 school year calendar adjustment, which is going to build off of what we just heard?
Yeah, so that one, as Patrick just mentioned, the removal of high school final exams. There are 3 days in June, excuse me, that are for high school exams. Without the final exams, we don't need those. So proposed change is to cancel those 3 half days. There are also 2 half days in May, as I mentioned, as part of that shift to canceling the half days with the offset for those early release Mondays. So the calendar would remove, the vote is to remove just the calendar this year by removing the 2 half days that are pre-K through 12 in May and the 3 half days in June for the high school and removing those from the calendar, making them all full days of school.
Thank you. So in the past, we've actually brought a paper calendar to you. This was intentional tonight. You did not receive a paper calendar because we have about 17 versions of paper calendars already floating around this year. So we didn't want to complicate that by throwing a draft and then another final on top of that. So we're going to ask you to vote this change. And then a final calendar will be put together, and that will be what actually goes out.
And if,
Is that
if we're
accurate
feeling
to say,
adventurous,
Brian?
well, if we're feeling adventurous, by March 31st, we can also confirm the last day of school. So if we wanted to do it that way, if we waited another week and a half, it's, we're not, there's no impact until May anyway. We have quite a while. We can just wait that 2 weeks and just send out a final calendar that actually notes the final last day as well. And then then we don't, and no one's going to get it. It's just going to be posted to the website. We're going to say, go look at it. Because there's been, as you said, so many versions floating around. So.
Yeah, been a tough year for calendars this year.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very good approach. If we can have, one less even, that would be great. So can I get a motion to approve the adjustments to the 2020-2021 school year calendar as presented and agreed, please?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I think I heard Maureen and Erin. All right. Any discussion on this? All right, I need a roll call vote, please. Erin.
Yes.
Paul Goldner.
Yes.
Maureen.
Yes.
Caitlin.
Yes.
Pauline.
Yes.
Linda.
Yes.
Paul Mayette.
Yes.
Tina.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that passes 2. So thank you very much for that. The last item that's kind of like a consequence of all of these, I guess, is when do we want to meet next? I mean, our next scheduled meeting is April 14th. I don't know if it's the will of the committee to meet sooner than that, or kind of what the committee would like to do. And I should say, if we don't meet before the end of March, this is Tina's last official meeting then. So, and thank you for your service, Tina, because you've done a tremendous job in the time you've been on, and I know it's been crazy stressful and all that, and we appreciate it. This is not an easy job, even in regular times, and you've put your heart and soul into it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Narissa. There's a lot I want to say, but I'm not going to because I don't want to get emotional and soon. So I will be following up with all of you after this, but thank you for everything that you do in the whole committee. This last year has certainly bonded us in a way that I don't think any of us would have imagined. So I'm just appreciative of all of you and the community and the administration. It's been a real honor to serve. So thanks, Narissa.
Thanks, Tina. So what's the will of
So can I say one thing out? So certainly the thanks to Tina. And there's always more chances. Just remember that. So I had mentioned to you, Narissa, that I hope to be prepared to bring to you a recommendation for appointment for a new special ed administrator. David leaves in June. So I'm still hoping to do that. It's not a full agenda. It would be a quick meeting. But my hope is to do that. We have 2 finalists. So we're still working through the process, going to continue that. I hope to wrap that up very early next week. And we'll be able to schedule a quick meeting. I mean, it could be just a quick update and that. If we wanted to do that, I would love to do that before April 1st to be able to firm a contract.
So if we look on Wednesdays, which I know is some of the easiest nights for the committee, that leaves us with the 24th or the 31st. What works for folks? Anybody have a conflict? Well, actually, I'm trying to think this through. If Brian's going to hear in 5 business days on the waiver, which will hopefully, fingers crossed, go through. I'm wondering if we should go for the 24th just in case it doesn't, or maybe that will give us bad karma and we should just assume it's going to come through and go for the 31st. What's your preference, Brian?
I mean, I'm hopeful that it's a non-issue. It would be a calendar change, so you would need to do that. So I'd rather do it sooner rather than later. So it was the 24th?
24th and the 31st are the next 2 Wednesdays.
Is there?
And And the 24th is actually our tentative. I mean, not that that really means a whole lot. We've been meeting as needed this year, clearly.
When's the survey going out? I'm sorry to interrupt. When's the survey going out and expected to close? Should we wait until that happens?
26th.
Yeah, I was gonna say it'll get out by either the time I go to bed on the 23rd or sometime on the morning of the 24th. It'll be due back by the 26th. If
Would
you
it make more
wanted-
sense to do it then, to do it the following week so that we can cover both topics instead of adding a meeting next week and then adding a meeting the following week?
Probably. It would be potentially, if we had to shift the calendar, it would be that week, right? So it would be that Friday, the 3rd, if we had to push that back, which again, I think is not going to happen, but it would be the same week of. Is there?
Can I just
Thursday night?
suggest that maybe we can,
That Thursday
sorry,
night, could we tag, or could we stack up a meeting with DCC on
with
Thursday?
DCC?
25th?
I guess we'd have to make sure. I mean, I guess we could like set it for 7:30, knowing that DCC is usually done by that time. We can't go any earlier because I know people start to have issues once we get down below 6:30, earlier than 6:30. It starts being conflicts for people with work and childcare and all that stuff. So we can't go earlier. We could go later, which means that we have to kind of make a guess as to when DCC would be over. But I think if we aim for 7:30, we could be very intentional about making sure that we meet that.
So we could be intentional about structuring the agenda and speaking with folks ahead of time. So whatever the updates are. I mean, I think everyone's got the budget. We've had a lot of budget discussions, so I don't think there's any surprises now. So I think it's more of an update. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say as far into next week as possible would give me the most information possible, right?
Okay.
As far as that waiver, if that's needed and all that.
Okay. So we want to aim for the 25th at 7:30. Does that work for everybody? Yes? No? They're all done. Linda, does the 25th at 7:30 work for you?
Yes.
All right. Paul Mayette? Yes? Caitlin?
I have to check on something, but probably.
Okay. That's fair. Erin?
Yeah, I can do either, but I was just really trying to avoid having to have that second conversation the following week if the survey results show that we're going to have to shift around and make more decisions.
Like I always say, I follow Aaron.
Yeah, but if we have to shift the calendar, then that puts us in a bad spot, right, Brian? I mean,
I understand that. I understand that.
Yeah, the survey wouldn't require your action. Is that a fair statement? Right? So there's nothing that we're going to have to shift around as far from the survey. There might be some logistics that we have to change.
Mm-hmm.
It would be hearing back from Desi on that waiver, which within 5 business days, it's by Wednesday. By the end of Wednesday, we should know. So by Thursday, we should be safe as far as the waiver. That's the only thing you would have to take action on would be the calendar.
Yeah, I'm just playing devil's advocate that if you really needed to shift around teachers that you have flexibility with the middle school and high school to put it off a little bit longer because to be able to do that, that's what I was thinking in the back of my head.
Gotcha. I would say, I think we call an emergency meeting if that happens. I think that's incredibly unlikely. So I think the one thing that would potentially, and again, I think it's very unlikely as well, would be needing to shift that Monday, that half day. But I think all the other pieces we'd be able to shift around.
Okay. Totally lost track of who I asked. Paul Lees, is it good for you? 25th at 7:30?
Sure.
All in one night. Thanks, Paul. Maureen?
Yeah, 25th is fine for me. So that would be following the DCC, correct?
Yeah, I think we have to set a hard time because again, like we were originally going to do when we had the executive session posted for tonight. I think it's 2 different agendas. So we probably set one for 6:30 and one for 7:30.
Okay, just as long as that, I mean, I don't know what the agenda is going to be for the DCC. I just don't want to cut them short. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Brian and I haven't talked about the things I was interesting were an update on this and a recap on kind of those last minute budget shifts, right? We took the health and wellness coordinator and put that off into the federal grant funding, right? And then we had that kind of funkiness with the way the cents were playing out and the discrepancy between the way those just shifted by a couple of dollars, right? I don't think anybody's going to question that, but you never know.
Right,
So
right.
something that doesn't usually.
I'm fine with it. I'm on the 25th. That's fine with me.
Okay. Who else did I miss? Paul Goldner? Did I get you?
The conversation kind of moved past. I was going to say something a few minutes ago. I'll still say it, but the 25th kind of does work for me. But I was going to say maybe it makes sense to schedule one for the 31st because everything would seem to be done for sure by then. And then if we need to do a calendar shift, call an emergency session because that would seem to fall in. I don't know if we could, but
Okay.
But yes, the 25th would work for me.
Okay. All right. We can always meet the following week if we do, but I mean, I don't see a reason for that right now. So Tina, do you think you can make one more school committee meeting? I know we just said goodbye.
I'm gonna be a maybe, but
okay.
I will try to make it.
I appreciate that. I know that, things take you away a lot. So
It's Greek Independence Day too.
Oh.
Well, we did this just to get you to one more meeting. What's happening?
I know after the goodbye, I do miss you guys. And I will miss you, although I wish I could see you in person. So I'm a maybe.
All right. Thank you, Tina. That's all I can ask for. I think I got everybody else. So let's aim for the 25th then at 7:30. For that. And then the 6:30 will be for the DCC with the towns. All right. Anything else that's left open? Brian, we good? Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Yes, we're good.
Okay. Paul Louise, I'm sure has been waiting.
Yeah, I'm on.
You muted. Did you mute yourself?
No.
Oh.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second
Can I get
it.
a second? Linda? All right. Thank you. Any discussion? All right. I need a roll call vote, please. Aaron?
Yes.
Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Paulise?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Paul Mayette?
Yes.
Tina?
Yeah.
And I'm yes as well. So thank you all for your time tonight, and I will see some of you, all of you, next Thursday for the DCC and the and a follow-up school committee meeting. And then before I forget, PNN put in a lot of hours this week, so thank you to them, and last week too. So thank you to you as well for all that work that you put in, and the TRTA for, coming in for those as well. All right. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Appreciate it.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Night.